Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode 2021.7. I'm Rohan Karamandi, and with me as usual, I've got Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Rohan. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Bit of a cold, but that's getting into winter. It comes with the territory, I guess.
That's right. Here it's allergy season. It's just pretty bad for allergies, actually. But yeah, it's there's just tons of allergies in the air, so I feel you there.
Bad, but also like heat, right? Like, wasn't Canada like 50 degrees or something the other day?
Yeah. Well, in the western part of it, we didn't get hit as badly here. It was warm and humid, but it wasn't Vancouver bad. So yeah. But I think they hit up with the Humidex was like 47 or something like that, which is crazy. But yeah, but I'm at least enjoying the summer, so which is good. So
that's it, right? Sort of getting out of lockdown, you can go and start enjoying yourself now, right?
That's right, a little bit at least.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESP home projects. Configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certs, or any other YAML.
All right. So 2021.7.
That's right.
So yeah, I think a great release. I've started playing with it the other day. It's good to see like little things around here that just getting tidied up a little bit. But there's a new entity that they're added in. It's called a select entity, and I don't think it's going to have a major. It's not going to be something they're going to write home about in the beginning, but it's going to be, I think, very useful for where they're heading in towards Home Assistant. And some things that we've talked about, with integrations, being able to, create things inside Home Assistant. And so this is a new type of entity. It's very similar to an input select type of, entity that you could create in Home Assistant. So, you would have a drop-down box. But this one is an auto-populating drop-down box that can then be used inside services and automations. So one example they've got is for like a light service which has effects. I'm thinking, I've got a nanoleaf here. You've got effects inside your nanoleaf or whatever they're called, the profile, the light profile or something. And inside Home Assistant, you'll see, effect color loop, effect this, all that. But now, if you customize those, or if you have a light that has, a different sort of effect, that can actually be sent over to Home Assistant and then added as an option in this drop-down, which is going to be good for things like blueprints and automations, and especially as things start moving into the user interface. We'll be able to go and then select those things and actually getting an updated list from this entity provider as well. So I think this is going to be a cool little thing. I can't wait for it to be expanded to things like, Sonos speakers that can have, their favorites automatically pushed out to Home Assistant. So you're getting a live updated list. But yeah, very cool to see, where this is going. Yeah,
that's pretty neat. So the big difference seems to be that this is kind of a dynamic list, whereas input select, you go in and you say, I want A, B, C, D, whatever, different options for whatever you're trying to do.
Yep. And, I think that's important to note that, like there could be an option that gets removed maybe, right? Like, if you remove a favorite in Sonos, one day, bam, it's not going to be in that list anymore.
Yeah.
So I think this will be cool for things like people creating custom Lovelace dashboards, that want to, have, things that can be selected by people on their dashboard, but, make sure that, you don't have to update it manually when you add a new playlist or something, or add a new color scheme or something in your.
Yeah, exactly. As a manufacturer or whatever adds something, then it just shows up, right? Which is kind of neat.
Then those code changes required by Home Assistant, you have to wait for a pull request to enable it or something.
Well, it's that much less of a breaking change as well, too, right? I think, which is usually pretty helpful. So,
yeah, that's also true.
All right. Trigger conditions and trigger IDs. So those are also kind of being brought in as well to kind of help with those very large automations. So a lot of times you'll have an automation to say, hey, if my trigger is A and B, but then not C, and then you'll have another one for saying A, but not B and C, whatever it is. So here you can actually add a lot more trigger conditions in the trigger. And it was kind of, I think you could do it before. It was just the way it was done was kind of like not annoying, but just it wasn't efficient the way it was made, right?
Well, it depends, because I think there's two ways that this can now work. So, if the original way to do it, and I've done this a lot of places in my automations, is to use a template inside a condition. So when a automation gets fired, you can actually access what triggered the automation through like the trigger variable inside the automation, and then you can use that in conditions. The issue with that, though, is you would have, let's say you've got two triggers based on a door opening, right? Like a door opens immediately and a door's been open for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
The problem with using the templated trigger approach is that the trigger entity ID would still be the same door in both scenarios. You wouldn't be able to know. You'd then have to do another trigger and say, how long has the door been open for?
Yes.
Right? Or you have to do another template to find that out.
Yeah.
But with this way, you can actually, separate those two triggers out and then give them separate IDs in the automation, and now you don't have to worry about templates or anything like that.
Exactly. And I think the nicer thing is that you don't have to use those templates, right? And as somebody who's, I'm not going to say I'm an expert by any means, but like as someone who knows how to use the system relatively well, I would say, it's still, I like template, and Phil, you know this, templates are something that always has screwed me up, right? Like it's just always been complex. It's you're working with the YAML, and then all of a sudden now you're introducing another Jinja to construct, right? Which is and which isn't too bad, but at the same time getting the exact
you got to have this, it's a totally different syntax, right? Like you stuff that syntax up, then you have to use the template editor and to debug it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a pretty tedious, right? And again, especially as we move towards that whole holy grail of Home Assistant being able to be consumed by the masses. To me, that was actually one one thing that held it back, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the less templates you have to do inside YAML or in Home Assistant in general, the better.
Yeah.
I try and avoid them where I can, because I know Home Assistant is going to be more efficient at using what I write in YAML, as opposed to me having to debug what I'm trying to accomplish in a template.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this. This is probably my favorite new addition in this release. I think as soon as I saw that, I was like, yes, I know exactly what I need to change. And so I have an automation for our living room. If someone's staying over as a guest and they need to, I have a guest mode, right? And, simple, just disable some automations or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've actually been sleeping out in the living room while my daughter's been sick. And so I have been, in the morning, I'll get up and I'll turn off the guest mode. But for whatever reason, because, I've got this sprawling logic, there'd be like a condition like it was too early. Wasn't triggering it when, I was expecting it to. But now with these with these trigger IDs, I've just been able to go, if I physically turn off the Boolean saying, no, guest mode is deactivated, just ignore every other condition, right? And just skip everything else and go do it, right? And
like guest mode being a master kind of switch, right? Essentially.
Else. Allows me to keep everything in one automation, so I don't have so many automations in the system. Yeah. But just, makes it perfect. Yeah,
which is great, right? So like check guest mode. Essentially, you're building a small function within a bigger template, right? Essentially, is what you're doing.
And so now, and this is going to have like such a good thing for things like my, dynamic presence, not so binary presence detection in Home Assistant. I'll be able to, specify, basically everyone can have their own ID. And then in the actions, change people based on what trigger ID got mentioned. So this is going to be very useful for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think more than just you, right? Like I think a lot of people that are doing this, and again, this is something I think, it's worth the time to take and figure out how this works. And then I think for people making their automations in YAML, I think you can actually just really quickly build stuff out, right? Because again, you don't have to worry about the Jinja 2 templates. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah. So I have like this master automation that's, and I think I use a Home Assistant group. So I basically put all the automations that need to be disabled if a guest is, staying, so you things like lights turning on, lights turning off, whatever else, or air conditioner, anything that needs to be disabled gets put into that group. And then, if depending on what time of night it is, if the TV gets turned off, then and guest mode is activated, then turn everything off in that group. Essentially makes it, And then that way you don't have to have conditions everywhere around the system, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to avoid.
But that's also like, yeah, it's a very, very inefficient way of doing it, right? But it's one of the only ways of doing it from before.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Right. And I also think it's more efficient in terms of if you disable the automation, then Home Assistant doesn't have to check the conditions every time. Like, so for example, let's say you've got your living room lights turning on when there's motion detected, right?
Yeah.
Previously, what I would have to do is in my living room lights automation, I would have a condition is guest mode on or off. But now that I've been able to just turn off that automation completely, that automation will never get triggered. So Home Assistant doesn't have to, every time the living room motion sensor gets triggered, check that condition.
Right.
So it's sort of those things where I'm trying to make, Home Assistant having to do less work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's my developer brain doing it. They've probably got...
No, as it should be, right?
Right. But yeah, I think that's how I try and, when I'm trying to think out my automations, I try and think out, how can I get Home Assistant to do less amount of work as possible when it needs, when something happens.
Yeah. No, agreed.
But anyway, I digress. A lot of guest automation stuff there. So also, so we're just talking about templates here, but if you have ever tried to use dates, and trust me, I have, in templates, they can be a royal pain in the bum. So as of this release, there is a new as date time function, which can be used against, a standard date time string. So what Home Assistant will do is it will take a date string, convert it into a proper date time object. It can then use all the other helper functions in Home Assistant, which is actually quite handy because previously there was a lot of these helper functions to go the other way, from a timestamp into, string or anything else. Like they made it a lot easier to go the other way. It just was hard to get something into a date time object. So this is going to be very handy for people that need to do that.
Yeah, no, that is pretty nice. I think, again, it's these kind of functions that make life a little bit easier, right? So,
definitely.
So speaking of, now it's possible to use other entity values as conditions. So you can actually reference the entity as a whole, and so you can say like, okay, above, below values, whatever, and use that as a condition, right? So whether it's a sensor or a number value, something like that, you can use that. So you can trigger an automation basically if the temperature is higher than blah, 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 then do so-and-so, like turn on your AC or whatever, right? Which, again, is one of those things where it's not impossible to have done it before. It's just this makes it a little bit easier. So it sounds like there was a bit of focus in this release around just it's the little things, right? Adding these little things in here to make it make more sense, to make it a little easier for using it as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like because I have a lot of things like, temperatures coded into my YAML, right? Like if this room is above this degree, change this. But having the ability to, for example, like use the weather from outside, I think is a great example, because once the weather, like I'm thinking, down here in Melbourne summers, a cool change rocks in, right? You could have a 40-degree day and, 5 o'clock at night, cool change rocks in and the temperature outside is actually cooler than it was inside. Being able to just have Home Assistant dynamically generate that and go, yep, that's all right. You need to open the windows now and turn the aircon off, right? Yeah. That makes it so much better to do.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to write a note and I'm going to do that for next summer before I forget about it, right?
That's right. There you go.
Some new integrations coming in this release. So Ambi is a cloud service provider for air quality and pollen information. So I think there was some pollen integrations that recently got taken out of Home Assistant. Yeah. So, this is bringing things back in. So if you are, using pollen information and allergy information in Home Assistant, it's a free API. So you do need to register and get a free API key, which is limited to 100 requests per day, which I think, if my math is right, is like 4 checks an hour or something.
Right. Just pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So if you do need more than, to check 2 locations, then you might need to halve your request limit. I'm sure there'll be a configuration for that. But yeah, I think cool to see a free service added into Home Assistant. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind, and I'm just going to take a tangent here, but things like this that, are limited to, 100 requests per day, surely maybe something like Nabu Casa could step in here, right? Like I'm thinking like there's thousands of instances of Home Assistant, right, that have, if there's 10 instances of Home Assistant in New York all getting the New York pollen information from this service, right?
So proxy to them.
Proxy to then of course there's privacy implications of that, which I understand. But because this like Ambi service, right? Like they're offering a free API. Now it's cool that Home Assistant is added, but then it puts pressure on them if all of a sudden they get thousands of people hitting up their free API, right?
Yeah. So make one request in place of that rather than
exactly.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. But yeah, again, I think I don't know if they would if the Nabu Casa guys would be interested in that, because again, to your point, there is a privacy implication and so on. But I guess if you're
that's all right.
Yeah, I guess, well, because today when you do use Nabu Casa, it is still fairly good for privacy. Like I don't think they're like recording a ton of stuff. Again, don't quote me on this. I don't work for Nabu Casa, but
they're pretty open with their statistics, right? Like that's all privacy baked in, right?
But that's also stuff you can opt out of.
Correct.
Right.
That's true.
You don't have to opt into the statistics and something like this. And I think this would be something like that too, right? Could you proxy my API request to known services or whatever, right? So where instead of proxying to, a service like Ambi, you would say, okay, well, instead of hitting up Ambi directly, you'd say, okay, let me send the request to Home Assistant and whatever latest thing they have. Great.
Yep.
Bring it down from there. But
exactly.
Yeah, I see it. I get the value, right? I just will they do it? I don't know.
I guess, and it doesn't really have any effect on like users, right? Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I'm putting my API key directly into Ambi or getting it from Nabu Casa, right? Like I'm still getting the same data, right? I think from a business point of view, right?
Yeah, I think it'll also be argued on the other side of the spectrum where it's like, okay, well, if you're going to build an API, build it properly so it does scale, so it is able to handle that, right?
That's true.
Especially if it's a free API, you should expect people to use it.
Yeah.
But I think I think still, again, rate limiting people to 100 a day or something like that is great. Like,
and sure, they've also costed that out; they can afford it, so that's fine.
Yeah. So, but hopefully that does, to your point, that does work out well. So. All right, another new integration, forecast.solar. So basically what forecast.solar does is they provide an estimated forecast for how much energy your solar panels will be using. Will be producing, not using. So basically the idea is how can you plan ahead and, how do you spend all of that energy that you harvested efficiently. So that's actually a kind of cool integration, especially if you have your solar whatever plugged into Home Assistant.
Yeah.
Right. So, you can utilize some like a service like Forecast to say, okay, well, based on this, it's kind of cloudy day. You know what? Maybe I'm going to turn off a couple of non-essential things, whatever that is. Right.
I wonder how far in the future it goes to though. Like, I wonder if it's, saying, say it's like Sunday today, right? Like, would I be able to say, is it going to be able to tell me, all right, for the next 5 days, the best day to put the washing on is going to be Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the best day for producing solar energy. I'd be very interested to see that.
It would be. I also, see, I don't know if I trust the accuracy of that, right?
Yeah, that's it, right?
And I'm not saying that the service is inaccurate, right? What I'm saying is I don't know if our meteorology services are accurate enough. Whoever, I mean, unless these guys have their own meteorologists, I don't know. But unless, typically they do consume it from some kind of government source or
it all comes from
some data that they pulled us from, right? And I just don't know if, I mean, just again, we always witness it, right? Like where it's like, hey, yep, it's 100% definitely raining right now, and you look outside and it's like bright skies, and
I know.
Right,
Last
whatever.
weekend, right here, bring an umbrella. It's going to be raining all weekend, right?
Yeah,
didn't see a drop of rain when I was outside at all.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly, right. And again, this is not a knock on meteorologists. I don't think that's an easy profession in any way, right? But I think it's
definitely.
It's also one of those things. I think you can only predict it so accurately, right? Yep. So do I want to say like, hey, I think this is the best day to do it, and then based on that, it not do it. So I mean, we'd love to hear, or I would love to hear some feedback at least, right? And if this works or not. Not that I have any solar or will be getting it anytime soon. I'm just curious, just out of if anybody does use this. let me know how accurate it is, or let us know.
Yeah. I'm guessing like even like people that are reliant, maybe they're off grid, got a Home Assistant instance running off grid,
Yeah.
or even like a tiny house, or,
Yeah.
even people like in RVs, right? Like we know there's people out there using Home Assistant in RVs that might have solar panels,
100%.
right? They might want to know, what is the best day to stop on the side of the road and charge them up while I go get a coffee, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's got to be like there's a lot of use cases for something like that. So yeah, we'd definitely love to hear all your interesting use cases.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that would be a lot of fun, because it is interesting, right? It's and I'm not being cynical or anything like that. I would genuinely love to see how accurate this is. Right.
Absolutely.
And if it's 7 out of 10, I'd say that's pretty good actually, right?
Yep.
So
all right. Another integration coming in is called Modern Forms. Now it's a bit of an interesting title, but Modern Forms, they have a line of smart Wi-Fi connected fans that allow for cloud or local control of the lights on the fan and also the fan itself. So there is support for individual sleep timers for the fans and lights that can be set and cleared independently. So yeah, Modern Forms fans now integrated into Home Assistant.
nice. All right, some other noteworthy changes. Couple of quick hits here. So first, there's some changes coming to the way Docker image tags work. So if you're not using Docker installations, this doesn't affect you. But if you're like myself and use the container installation method, basically Home Assistant is recommending that you use a specific version tag within Docker. So if you're like me, I'm typically on the beta release, so my tag is RC, or most people use latest, whatever that is, right? So major versions and patches will be under the parent tag. And then, so for example, 2021.7.1, which is this release that we're talking about. 2021.7. And then if there's a patch, that would be a .1 that will be added to the 2021.7. So therefore, if you add any, or if you just do a Docker pull, even if you don't change that tag, you will get the latest update, which is actually great. That to me is how it should be, right? I think personally, I don't see them deprecating like latest or RC, but I think if you want to pin yourself to a specific version, I think what they are doing is good, because you do still want the latest tag, so the latest patch. So as an example, if there is a security vulnerability that gets discovered, you can still stay on your same version without having to go in and adjust the tag or anything like that. You just need to do a Docker pull.
Yeah,
great. I think that's a good way to do it.
And it's also, I think, to prevent a lot of people getting breaking changes if they just, specify the latest, if the latest tag in Docker, because then, once the new release comes out, you're going to always download the latest and greatest, which could introduce breaking changes. So this is just another way to sort of version off and keep people, where they're expecting to be in sort of the version state. I do hope that they keep the latest tag going. I think that's a sort of standard Docker thing. It's very consistent. So I can't see them getting rid of the latest tag. But I think it's good that at least those base tags are coming in, which is very common in software around on Docker anyway. There's always a parent tag has always been updated with, the minor bumps anyway. So cool to see that.
So you don't need to add a .1, .2, .5, whatever it is, right? Like
exactly right.
It just 2021.7, and great, you get the latest 2021.7.
But also, if you do want to, download number 6 instead of number 7, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
Because they'll be tagged there anyway.
Yeah.
WLED has added WebSocket support in this release. So now those WLED devices will be able to instantly report status updates back to Home Assistant, which is very cool. Last release, we saw the Philips Hue integration get that. So yeah, cool to see, instant status updates back for these WLED devices, which seem to be everywhere. Everyone seems to have a WLED device nowadays.
Yeah. There's a new service to reset a smart tub reminder, which I love these kind of things, right? It's just, so when Jeeves comes in to replace your filter of your smart tub, you can have the maintenance reminder reset automatically. So I just love hearing about, again, like, especially I think smart washroom accessories are my favorite thing to hear about, right? Like smart toilet, smart tub, smart anything like that. Like it's
You have a very nice backyard with your like pergola setup. When are you going to get a smart tub? Like,
That's right.
I think you've got everything. Like, we've added this into the release notes now around like.
That's right.
I think you need to do it. You just, especially before winter kicks in, right?
I would love to get a smart hot tub. It would be my favorite thing, but it's,
I think buy the hot tub and then make it smart. That's your excuse to buy the hot tub in the first place, right?
That's
you
right.
You need to test all these integrations that keep getting added in.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. I need it's for science, really.
Yeah, for science. Yeah. No other purpose. Now there are new input elements on the login page. Now this doesn't seem like it would be a huge thing, but it's great for people that have password managers. Which should be everybody. Yes, everyone. You should get a password manager. If you want a free one, I recommend Bitwarden and self-hosting Bitwarden_RS, which I think has been renamed to Vault Warden or something like that. Basically, open source, free, self-hosted.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. I won't spruik too much more, but the input elements. So previously, when you couldn't use a password manager effectively on the Home Assistant login page because the way the front end is built and the input elements sort of weren't there in the background. So now, even if your password manager could support it before, it should maybe work better, or it will support a whole range more of password managers. But now you should be able to use those password managers effectively to log in to Home Assistant. So I know I've been putting off using a password manager for that reason, but now that they are there, I will start randomizing my passwords in my Home Assistant installations and use that. That's great.
Yeah, there you go. You can now make groups out of media players. Honestly, I think that statement says it all. But essentially, if you want a little more clarity, so you can have similar types of, again, media players and such brought into a group. So you can say, I don't know, maybe Sonos, Chromecast audios, like a bunch of different types of media players. You can basically say, okay, I want to play across all of these, or I want to do whatever across all of these devices. You can actually go in and send it to a single media player entity. And then if you say stop or play or whatever from Home Assistant, all of them will stop, all of them will play. Now, for the most part, with things like Amazon Echoes and Google Homes and things like that, there's typically like an everywhere element. But what happens when you have both? You have Google Home and Echoes and Sonos and blah, 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 blah. I think if you group media players this way, you can just send one command out to one thing and off you go.
So I think a good analogy for this is you can have like two lights, but then in Home Assistant you can create them as a single light entity under a light group.
Yeah.
So let's say you've got, I think you've got your range hood, right, Rohan? Like you've got two smart bulbs in your range hood.
Yep.
Left, right, and then because they're two independent bulbs in Home Assistant, you could bring them in as one light entity and just group them together as a single light, right?
Yeah.
And Home Assistant would know to turn each individual light off when you do a single light turn off on that one. Same thing with this media player, right? Like you can now set up a group media player entity, like media player type group, and then specify all the media players as an entity and control them with one media player stop service.
Yeah, exactly.
I did also see in there as well that you can actually, like when you're using the Home Assistant groups, right? So you could have things like, like device trackers. They have like home, not home, for the group level. I think they also have that, and I'll have to confirm that I haven't added a media player group yet, but I think they have like the same sort of thing.
So like playing, not playing.
Yeah, it's either in playing or not playing, but from reading the GitHub comments, it looks like it's going to actually just say home or not home. I'll have to check it. I sort of was like, oh, why would a media player group say weird. Not home?
Yeah.
My logic would have been, if a media player, if one media player in the group is playing, then the whole group is playing.
Yeah.
Or the whole group is stopped. And maybe that's how it works. I just haven't got that far into the release notes yet. But
I'd be curious to know. Sorry to interrupt. I'd be curious to know if there's. So one of the big things behind groups within like it's like a single ecosystem, whether it's Sonos or Google or Amazon or whatever, is the ability to synchronize that playlist and to synchronize that music or whatever. So if I say play, sure, it's going to take that, take whatever song. Let's say I'm listening to a song, whatever, a Spotify playlist, something like that. I say play, and it plays across all of my devices. but within like an everywhere group of like whether it's Google or Amazon or Sonos or whatever, they actually there's some control behind there that happens where they all synchronize and play whatever music.
Mm.
When it's done
Like
this way
at
the exact same time. So that's why you don't hear any weird like phases like a phase shift essentially when like you're walking in from one room that has a Sonos to another room that has a different Sonos. You don't hear that they're like a second apart or like half a second apart or something like that. There is some kind of synchronization. I think I want to say it's Sonos that holds that patent. I might be wrong.
Yeah,
but
it's probably sure it's Sonos. Yeah.
So which is why it took a while for that to come into some of the other devices, right? As I think they were working through some of that stuff. So that is really cool. But what happens when I'm sending it across one, like let's say I have all three of those in my home, right? Mm-hmm. In my case, I have both Google Home and Amazon, right? And let's toss Sonos in that mix too, which I don't have, but let's just put it in there. I wonder if everything synchronizes still. Is that some kind of an open standard now that they do, or is it I
strongly doubt it. Right, like even like the Amazon Echo just supported it, right? And they
because they were the last to get it.
Yeah, and I think it's actually a very complicated thing, and that's why it's only slowly being only a few companies have had it for a while, like Sonos obviously being the leader. And I think it's actually quite difficult to do because I think Sonos has its own, like even though you connect it to its Wi-Fi, it creates its own separate network, so it knows to sync all the speakers around and buffer things around. So I don't think it would work across multiple devices. You also got to think like in terms of Spotify, right? Like when you play a Spotify track against, Sonos or your Google Home or your Amazon Echo, that's technically 3 different services playing content from your Spotify account.
Yeah.
And Spotify only lets you play one thing at a time. So only one of those players will be able to play that Spotify track, if that makes sense.
Right, but I could see Home Assistant acting as a proxy for something like that. So Home Assistant's playing it and then relaying it or whatever, relaying it to whoever. Which that part I'm actually less concerned about. I'm concerned about if I'm listening to it, I don't want my bedroom to be in a different spot of the song than my or podcast or whatever it is I'm listening to. As I'm walking through my home, I don't want that, like whatever I'm listening to be in different spots. It seems kind of choppy. It seems kind of it's just not a fun experience, right?
Yep.
It's like if you have 2 TVs going, let's say upstairs and downstairs, and both people are watching the same thing, or both TVs are showing the same thing, and you're hearing your TV, but you're hearing, like, let's say your downstairs TV or something, and you just heard what happened, and you're hearing it again from downstairs, right? It's kind of that same kind of a crappy experience that you don't want. Whereas you don't get that with the Googles, the Google Homes, the Amazon Echoes, and the Sonos devices, and I'm sure there's a ton more that do the same thing that I'm not mentioning. It's just those are the big 3. So I don't. Yeah, I'm really curious to know how that works. If I say play this, is it going to be crappy? It's the long and short of it, right?
I guess there must be a use case for those like groups of media players. I'm assuming that it would be good for things that
it'd be good for a stop, like, hey, good night, and then everybody stops.
So I'm thinking like text-to-speech announcements, right? Like because when the text-to-speech MP3 file gets generated, it's generated locally onto your Home Assistant instance, and then can get pushed out to those media players. So maybe, to your point that you were saying, about all those different devices, maybe the lag, because it's all local, won't be that much. I don't know. I do think every device will have, these big companies spend a big ton of cash getting that lag perfected, right?
Yeah, 100%. And just speaking of TTS, the Echoes don't do that for TTS either, right? So, like, for example, I have my door announcements that go through the entire house, and I'll hear it 4 times. Like
same thing. Have you ever used like the announcement feature of the Echo? Like, I have like all my Echo, like every different, like I've got the Echo Dot, the Echo Show, I've got some Amazon Kindles. Every device that plays the announcement plays it at a different time, and it's just like a wave going through the house when the announcement goes off, right?
Yeah, and well, that's how I do my like front door open, back door open, whatever.
Yep.
Is I actually do it through announcements. So it gives you that like ding ding first, and then it says whatever it has to say, and you'll hear it like front door open, right? And it's like as exactly what you said, right? Like you can hear the different things. And even that annoys me personally. So I'm like, ooh, if it's anything other than like, yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because what are they doing in the background to help this? I don't see anything happening there, but so potentially limited use cases for that.
I think so. My solution for your front door announcement is to just bite the bullet and buy Sonos. And then what I did was pre-record the Amazon Echo Lady's voice into an MP3 file and store that in my Home Assistant instance. So now, I just group all the Sonos players together and play the one MP3 file.
Yeah. So it's synchronized and
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she's, I don't have that wave effect, but yeah, anything else.
Yeah.
It's coming.
I'm too cheap to go out and buy more stuff.
I tried to upsell you on a smart tub machine. I even tried to, told you that it was going to be, outside.
So you started at a hot tub, which I already can't afford, and now we're going to. You're working your way down. I get it. Yeah, pretty soon I'll end up with some kind of smart switch, and here's a $30 alternative.
If I'm lucky, right? The home brand version, right?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Sony Bravia TVs now exposes a remote component, allowing you to control your Sony Bravia TV from Home Assistant. So always good to see a new TV getting added in. So now you'll be able to press buttons or emulate buttons and have a nice user interface inside Lovelace.
Yeah. Also, another thing coming to the UI is Coinbase. So the Coinbase integration will now be configured from the UI.
There you go. So see, more stuff coming in. Like it's another cryptocurrency.
That's right.
Change. So it must be in another bull market.
That's right.
We'll see. Well, we're going to see next month. What do you reckon? A new exchange added or?
Oh God, there's stuff coming up like daily. I've been following some of these pretty closely, and it's like there's just so much happening. It's like every day is just another like. Here's another like, especially if you're looking in the decentralized finance market, it's like there's like 600 coins that came out this
when's
like
the
hour.
The official Home Assistant NFT going to be like, right? Like when do we get to buy in on that? Right?
That's right.
But Paulus is like sitting there like, yes, I'm going to release 100 of these NFTs and everyone get a stake in Nabu Casa. Go.
Yeah. Actually, Paulus is like, shut up, guys. Please stop talking. Stop encouraging people to do this. No, okay.
Yeah. Breaking changes. So there's a few more breaking changes in the release notes, but just a couple that we thought would be very important to get out to you. So blocking incorrect reverse proxies. So if you use a reverse proxy like Nginx to expose Home Assistant to the outside world, so if you're not using Nabu Casa, if you're rolling your own way to get behind your firewall at home using a reverse proxy, then this will apply to you. So Home Assistant will now block those requests where a special HTTP header, which is called useXforwarded4, and trusted_proxies are not set correctly. So they're very easy to not set correctly. So just make sure that your configuration in your reverse proxy is done properly, because as of this release, Home Assistant will start blocking those requests, just as a proper security protocol there.
And if you don't know what that means, then again, that's more of a case for Nabu Casa, right? It's super advanced, and not super advanced, but it's advanced enough. And that's something that Nabu Casa makes way easier. So Prometheus. So Prometheus, if you use it, now converts temperatures from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So if you're relying on temperature_C to be in Fahrenheit, you need to make those adjustments and basically do a unit conversion in PromQL.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Should we get into another debate about Fahrenheit and Celsius in this episode?
Yeah, no. It's we actually that generated some good conversation in the Discord. So
it did, didn't it?
Which I was great. Yeah.
Who knew that 0 degrees and 1 degrees isn't like double the temperature, right?
That's right. There you go.
All right. So some other news around the ecosystem of Home Assistant, I guess, this month, Rohan, and big one to come out is Tuya are actually started working on a native Home Assistant integration that looks like it's going to be two-way and potentially local.
Yeah.
As well. So really exciting, because for those that don't know, Tuya is basically the white label brand of, the, I don't want to say cheap, but more budget friendly smart home Wi-Fi connected devices, right? I know out here in Australia, we have Kogan. They are a very popular retail outlet. They have a whole bunch of their Kogan Smarter Range stuff. And this isn't an advertisement for that stuff. I'm not recommending it at all. I do have some of their things just because, they've got things like Wi-Fi connected humidifiers or oil diffusers, smart switches, heaters, and this is all under the hood. It becomes Tuya, right? So they have just, taken Tuya's technology from them and purchased it and licensed it to create their own stuff. So, and then you can go to Bunnings, which is another hardware store down here, and you'll get like your Arlec power board that has a power strip with Wi-Fi sockets on it, and that's also Tuya, right? Two different brands.
There's tons of brands. There's hundreds, if not more, brands that use Tuya.
I'm sure, like you could name
Globe. There's a bunch. Yeah.
So Tuya, by doing this, are actually going to open up a lot of brands to have a native interface into Home Assistant, which is
awesome. But so what's interesting about this is it sounds like it's going to be specific for Home Assistant to use. I don't know if that means it's going to be like I guess not a side load, but maybe like a special firmware that through the Tuya app would get updated or something like that. Or if it's just, hey, Home Assistant plugs into the Tuya and to your Tuya device, and Tuya recognizes that as Home Assistant and then pulls down a specific thing. So I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't even know if any of that's hashed out. So Paulus did tweet about that, and so it should be interesting to see what exactly happens. But yeah, it sounds like it's going to be exclusive to Home Assistant to use, which it is definitely a step forward. I mean, I'd love to see that just open, but it's at least somebody like Tuya is coming to the table to at least come talk about it, right? To say, hey, like let's look at something like this. So,
well, I know I have so many devices. There's also a few, like in the hack store. There's like a local Tuya component that I've imported, just to try and get local control. I wrote some Node.js Docker containers to use the Tuya API to get access to my like power board that I was talking about and the oil diffuser. I've got a kettle that I can sort of turn on but can't get all the readings from it. So I'm really hoping that this official Tuya integration will just unlock all those devices for me. And if that's the case, then people better watch out, because I may start buying everything from Tuya.
But that's the thing. Like if people open their stuff up, more people are like, it's exactly what you said, right? And I know Paulus and Frank and family have been giving the same kind of argument for a while, but it is so true. Like if you open it up and if I can integrate it, I am more likely to buy your product.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
that. It's just that simple, right? Like,
and it's interesting, right? Like, so as I said, I have a couple of those Kogan devices, but it doesn't mean I have never installed the Kogan app, right? Because of it's all Tuya. I just installed the Tuya app, and then I can actually see, like, when you go in, it's either as part of the Tuya app itself, or either when you're registering for a developer to get the API keys for it. Yeah. They have a list of what is your device, right? And the amount of smart stuff they've got, I have never even knew existed, right? They've got like smart air fryers, smart ice making machines.
Hot tubs?
Probably. I didn't go that far down the list, right? I didn't have the budget for that. But, the amount of stuff that I've never even thought that could be, Wi-Fi connected. Yeah. Someone has white labeled this to your device to make a smart ice box out there. I don't know who it is. I want it. Yeah. But as soon as this integration with Home Assistant is done, I'm looking into it. But yeah, it's amazing like how much this is going to unlock around the world as well, right?
The trickle down effect is crazy because again, Tuya is one of these massive manufacturers of this kind of stuff. Yep. And whether you know it or not, you probably have something Tuya in your house. And
if it connects to Wi-Fi, there's a good chance that it is Tuya based.
Yeah, and I think Tuya uses ESP under the cover, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they used to, but then I think a lot of their new stuff, like they've
custom.
Because what happens is people, they start tinkering, right? Like, it's just an ESP, I'll flash it, right? So then they get on. It's like the old fashioned days, right, where you sort of find a back door into something, and they would put a firmware out and patch that up. Tuya has been known to do that in the past.
Yes.
And then you'd have to go, I've got the wrong version installed. I don't upgrade the firmware on this device.
Yeah.
So by Tuya actually coming to the party to do this native integration, I think will prevent a lot of that needing to be done in the future.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of not having to do that, especially when you're like sitting there opening up your like power switches and stuff like that. Because you know what, God forbid something happens, right? And your insurance isn't going to cover you because they're like, well, this was a compliant device and now it's not because you open it up and modified the circuitry inside, right? And you know your house is burnt down, and again, I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but you know, the idea is at that point, at least my insurance provider 100% will be like, yeah, too bad, right? Sorry, you're out one house. Yeah. So not a fan of doing that if I can avoid it, right? So, but speaking of ESP, Phil, you had a little bit of an experience with the ESP Home browser provisioning. So for those that haven't seen it, and I mean, we do talk about it, but there is you can now provision ESP devices, or ESP32s, ESP86s, whatever. I guess it's mostly 32s through using your browser, and you've actually done it.
So in the last episode, I was talking about my AM43 blind controllers, or my blinds, right? My AM43, and I had a Raspberry Pi Zero running around the house, and for whatever reason, I did an upgrade or something like that on the code, because it just stopped reporting one of its state, right? So I thought, I'll just upgrade the Node.js version. And then I ran into this whole thing where I was running incompatible Node.js versions under the hood, and essentially I couldn't control my blinds. So Brian, CM, and Linux Ovens on Twitter reached out and said, hey, just downgrade your MQTT broker and it'll work, right? And unfortunately for me, it wasn't the MQTT side of things that was the problem. It was actually on the Raspberry Pi Zero, was the code, right? Like it was a Node.js compiling issue, and underneath the hood was like a Bluetooth low energy package that was compiled against a different Node version, and it was just a mess, right? And I was like, I just can't, I don't have the time to try and fix with this. And so JJ Lamont on Twitter replied and linked me to a GitHub repo from at Buxtronics, and it's basically an ESP Home capable code to pair with an AM43 blind, and expose it to Home Assistant over MQTT Discovery, which is basically what I was doing before. Absolutely perfect, right? Now, the ESP Home side of things is still beta, and I understood that, and I was like, that's fine. Sounds like I need to get on board this ESP32 thing. I have never laid eyes on an ESP32 before, honestly. So, and this was before like the ESP Home browser provisioning had come out, so this was like a week before or something. I actually pinged you up and I said, hey, what ESP32 board did you buy, right? Like, I have no idea what I'm buying. Did you have to solder anything? Because I don't have a soldering iron. I don't want to solder anything, right? Like, you have to solder stuff. That's as far as my DIY tinkering is gone, right? So anyway, I found something on eBay. It was like $15 Australian. It came like a week later. And literally like the same week that Home Assistant announced, this browser provisioning from ESP Home, I had an ESP Home board, or I had an ESP32 board. I had no idea what to do. So I went onto their little provisioning website and followed the instructions. I must admit, I did find the instructions a little bit confusing just as a first-time user. So I plugged in my ESP32 board. It said, use a Chrome browser. I was using Brave, which is, a spin-off of Chrome. I was like, this will work. It's all the same thing. Oh, it's not working. What have I done wrong? So then, you definitely do have to use Chrome. So once I got Chrome, I'm on Mac, so I had to download the drivers, which was linked somewhere else on the page. Once I got through that, I installed those. But then I just plugged in my ESP32 and Home Assistant did its thing and said, okay, now put in your Wi-Fi credentials, and I put them in, and then it goes, cool, would you like to add this to your Home Assistant? Click this button, and I clicked the My Home Assistant button, and I got redirected into my local instance, and it popped up, would you like to add this, ESP Home integration? And I said yes. And it was there. And I guess for me, like I imagine a lot of people listening to this going, well, that took me, like 2 days to get that far ahead. I've done it in literally 10 minutes, right? And I'm complaining because now I'm like, all right, I have this device in Home Assistant. What do I do with it? And I think that's as far as like the demo got, if that makes sense. So for for what Home Assistant or what Nabu Casa and ESP Home released was basically like a demonstration of this onboarding process, right?
Yeah.
And the idea being that this can now be rolled out to other projects that want to allow people one-click installs of their ESP32 boards and all that. So I was a bit confused on what I did next. So then I had to, I think you download so then it tells you to download an ESP Home add-on. And of course I'm running a Home Assistant Docker instance. So I had to find the Docker installation method. That was fine. Got that done. And then I had to do a little bit of tinkering with that Buxtronics repo to get it working. But eventually I was able to get it working perfectly. I flashed my ESP32 board with their firmware and set up my Bluetooth LE profile against the blind controller, and it has been rock solid since.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Amazing, right? And it's a dedicated device. It just does that. If I unplug it and plug it back in, I know it's going to boot back up and do its thing, right? So,
yeah. The nice thing I like about it too is there's no about ESP32s in general, because it is literally a microcontroller that does one thing. To your point, there's no Linux kernel under the covers that you have to deal with or keep updated or anything. There's none of that stuff. It's literally just
that.
Here's this thing with Wi-Fi and BLE, and it does one very specific thing exactly how you tell it to.
Does what it does
and
on the tin, and
it's great.
You don't have to worry about software updates for it, right? I don't see unless I change, MQTT broker or, anything else that thing. I should never have to reflash for years to come.
Yeah, and ESP32 actually, the ESP Home actually has an API too, right? So you don't even need to use MQTT necessarily if you don't want to. You can just literally leverage the API for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, if the
repo uses it, then
the repo definitely relies on MQTT discovery.
Which is fine.
That's great, right? So I was very impressed. I am. And now, of course, I'm like, cool, what else can I do with these little things, right? And looking at that ESP Home page, there is so much. I know you've got at least one or two there, doing your MyFlora flower sensors, right? That's going to probably be my next mission.
Yeah.
I stopped using those because they would just kept dropping out or something.
Yeah. It's a pain to deal with it individually, right? But with this, so the only thing I've noticed that I don't get, that I lose is the battery percentage. So I don't get the battery percentage, which is a little bit annoying, but I also know that if it doesn't show up, then my battery's dead on it, right?
Or you could probably do if it stopped reporting, 10 within 10 days or something, then it's probably got a flat battery, right?
Exactly, something like that, right? So, but yeah, it's I use it for that. I have a kettle that I think I've talked about this in the show before. A friend of mine for Christmas last year or year before last, I don't remember, but I got gifted this kettle by Stag. It's the EKG Plus. It's
a very nice kettle. May I just say, I was looking. Well, I just spoke about my smart kettle before, right? I got the cheapo Kogan smart kettle. It's 2-year based. Yeah, I was looking because I was like, mate, I've heard about your smart kettle. Tell me what it is. That is a nice kettle, man, and the price that comes kettle with it is very nice too, right? It was $600, for me to buy it in Australia, and I don't even think
I think this is $200-300, but it's. Which to me for a kettle is still very pricey, right? It's so again, this is not something I would have bought myself. It was definitely gifted, but which is awesome. But it is BLE driven. So there's a couple of people out there that have actually literally just Googled Stag EKG BLE ESP32 and bam, right? So I went out, spent the $12 or whatever for a ESP32, and I popped that code on there for ESP Home, and it's in Home Assistant. So literally, that's just it.
Had someone already made an ESP Home version for you to upload, or was it did you have to do a conversion yourself to get it to work to be able to be uploaded through ESP Home?
Oh yeah, no. Somebody's already created. I'm not that smart. It's don't listen. I will not take credit for somebody else's work in that sense. I will say I ran the ESP Home tool, plugged in my ESP Home, and obviously this is pre the browser provisioning method. ran it locally, plugged it in to my laptop, and I compiled and uploaded. And I like changed my wireless SSID, and like that was the level of effort that I've put into this, right? But again, it's to me, that is, I mean, we don't really talk about it too much, but we always talk about the Home Assistant community and stuff like that. But the ESP Home community is awesome for this kind of stuff, right? Because people have found these kind of use cases. There's one, I haven't done it yet, but you and I were talking about it, Phil, which is the IKEA Idison desk, which is my sit-stand desk that I have upstairs. The only thing I don't like about that desk is I actually prefer like a up-down button with like memory and stuff like that. This uses an app. So this is their more like premium desk, but it's BLE based, and it does have a switch on it's like a little lever on the table itself that you can mount, and you like push it up for up, push it down for down. So it's like a paddle almost. But I actually prefer the one where I can just go like, I don't want to pull out my phone every time I want to be like, hey, remember Rohan's setting, or remember my girlfriend's setting, or like whatever, right? Like, and that's just effort. So there are a couple of people that have created ESP32 scripts essentially for that. I haven't played with it yet, but that is something that's on my to-do list, because then I can just say, hey, Amazon Echo, set table to Rohan, right? Or whatever, and it will automatically adjust the height to the preset height.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I haven't played with those. I don't know how well they work, if they work or whatever. I'm sure they do. I have no reason to doubt that. But it's just for BLE applications specifically, I think it's a really, really cool way, right? But again, the problem is for me to actually build that, I've read some of the threads behind people doing this, especially for like the desk and stuff. It's like they've literally sat there and decoded every BLE message, and I'm like, man, I am not that intelligent. Like I can't do that. But I guess not never say never, but it is a ton of work that people have put into this, right? Which, again, from me personally, a huge thank you to all of those folks, right, that are doing this. But
okay, just on that, like, because I just randomly off topic, I installed Room Assistant a couple of months ago now, just to see if I could do some Bluetooth tracking against my tiles. So I have some Tile Pros that are little Bluetooth beacons, right? And I have because I've got so many devices, right, that are all BLE based, right? And a lot of people do, right? Like, I think your phone is a BLE device. You've got headphone, like if you've got Bluetooth headphones, they're probably coming up. Yep. I had a whole bunch of devices that were just, I needed to find out what these tag IDs were, right? But because I have so many devices, right? So I'd let it scan for 10 minutes, and I'd see like these devices. I'm like, okay, that one. I've seen that before. I ended up putting things in the microwave to try and like do a process of elimination on because I wanted to find what this specific tag was, right?
Yeah.
And I've got this tag, and it's consistent. I'm like, okay, I know that I've seen that before, right? It says tile. I've seen that ID. I'll add it to Home Assistant, and I'll track whenever it comes home and whatever, and I'll know what it is, right? But because I have so many devices, I to this day on my phone, when we got home today, I got an alert saying, whatever device you're tracking got home. I don't know. I still don't know what it is. It could be my keys, could be my wallet, but there is just so much BLE traffic going on for these people to be able to isolate it down and track their table and all that sort of stuff. It's not easy, right?
Yeah, it's so much effort, right? Like it's, and a lot of times manufacturers do provide like, whether it's an OUI or something like that, like which identifies, the manufacturer or the device or whatever it is. Fine, cool, right? Or it's against some known list of known MAC addresses or something like that, right? Where you can say, okay, this is from Tuya, or this is from whoever. I don't know. Actually, Tuya doesn't have BLE, but whatever. This is these vendors, right? Xiaomi as an example for the MyFlora sensors. So that's kind of cool, right? I don't know exactly where in that stack it is, but a lot of devices don't do that too. So if even on my ESP32, if I'm like scanning for trying to find my MyFloras or the MiFloras, whatever, like you see 100 other devices there that just have no description, no nothing, and it's just a bunch of MAC addresses that you see, right? So it's like AF:BB:,
and the worst, right?
Like, yeah, and you're like, oh, great, this means something. That? So again, it is not easy to do these kind of things. So I think that's a huge huge shout out there for the folks that do take the time to do this. But yeah, like the ESP32s and the 8266s are definitely awesome for this kind of stuff. I love, especially the 32s. I love those things.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at that ESP homepage, like of all the little projects. I think there was a water level sensor in there that like uses like an ultrasonic little sensor.
Yeah,
that you can like measure how full something is, like a water tank. There is a lot of applications that I could definitely, like, if I just need to retire so I could have like so much like little projects I could just do every day, right? Like
I just need enough money to live
retire,
happily and do this kind of crap.
Sit in a nice bunker somewhere and just be like a modern day Tony Stark, right? And just
that's right.
Do all these little cool little things. Bunker dream, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. So.
But yeah, I think congratulations to ESP Home and Nabu Casa for releasing that, because that is a great little feature. It must have saved me. I don't know how much it saved me, because I literally just plugged it in and within 10 minutes I was connected to the Wi-Fi and using ESP Home to upload firmware. So yeah, certainly helped me out.
Yeah, I think it just eases the process, right? So this kind of technology becomes more available to everybody, not just techie kind of people, right? So
that's it, and that's the goal of it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Really quick, one other thing I guess we can talk about. I know we've gone quite long, but GitHub Co-Pilot. I know Frank posted a tweet about this, and essentially what it is leveraging GitHub and Visual Studio Code to basically complete things like your automations or whatever it is you're building in Home Assistant in YAML, where essentially you just tab it out and everything kind of fills itself. So you kind of give a description of what you're trying to do, and off you go. We'll link that tweet. Check it out. It's actually pretty neat in terms of what it can do.
I cannot wait to experiment with this. It looks so the idea being that, so if people that have shared their Home Assistant configuration up into GitHub's machine learning mastermind matrix thingamabob has gone through and traversed all of your YAML files as it does, and has built out this artificial intelligence machine learning algorithm. And so in the tweet, there will a little link. Frank literally just types in a comment saying, when the lights turn on from the kitchen motion or whatever, do this. And sure enough, like literally Visual Studio Code just prompts Frank for the YAML. So it goes, all right, the next thing you want to write is trigger. The next thing you want to do is a platform state. And then here's an example entity ID for a motion sensor. And it builds out the whole thing. I had no idea of GitHub Copilot in general, but it looks fantastic. I am interested in it from a Home Assistant perspective, but also from just, professional coding, right? Like to be able to, this is like where, and this stuff like really excites me, right? Like being able to use machine learning and this stuff to save time. Like the Copilot is a fantastic name for this sort of project. And I'm very excited to get my hands dirty with it. Yeah, no, that should be a lot of fun. But it's pretty cool. Check it out. We'll link the tweet in the show notes if you haven't already seen it. Yeah. Apart from that, Ron, I think we've talked ourselves around in circles today. Usually this is the time I would ask how your machine learning delivery driver man's going, but I guess we'll let you off this one. Perfect. And if you want the quick status update, it's not still. But I like it. All right. Well, stay safe, everyone, and we'll speak to you all soon. Cheers. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io. The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.